This is Hearing the Truth Radio. By tuning into this program, you have irritated the devil. This is the Lord's program. This is where you hear what He has to say. This is the way it is. If you're new to this show, be advised you may not want to hear some of the things discussed here. And if you're a dispensationalist, you really don't want to hear it. But it's not our job to entertain you. If you want to be entertained, watch any TV show. This program is not politically correct. We don't play spiritual hopscotch or any of that garbage. And we're not here to listen to ourselves speak. Okay, it's time for some truth. So here's our teacher, D.S. Ferris. D.S., welcome back to Hearing the Truth.
Mike, once again, it is good to be on Hearing the Truth, where we can discuss the truth instead of the things that spurious organizations would pay us to preach. There is a saying, never expect someone to understand something when his paycheck demands that he doesn't understand that something. This, unfortunately, is the way most teachers function in the Christian world. They will not understand, much less teach the truth, because the truth does not rake in the money. Therefore, popular fiction has filled the pulpits and radio stations.
Yeah, but that's not the way things work with us at Hearing the Truth. No amount of money will persuade us to stack garbage on the truth. You can believe that. God's looking for people who will not be bought, who will not be sold. If any of our listeners believe this, we say to you, you've come to the right place.
Well said.
Last week was truly an interesting study. We began the process of studying the system of the dragon. In particular, our study focused on the fourfold interpretation of the dragon. D.S., would you briefly explain the fourfold interpretation of the dragon?
The fourfold interpretation is as follows. 1. If we look at the dragon in the perspective of his 7 heads with 7 crowns, he represents the 7 successive pagan kingdoms that persecuted both ancient Israel and the church. 2. If we look at the dragon in the perspective of his attempt to kill Christ, he represents pagan Rome sitting on the 7 hills. 3. If we look at the dragon in the perspective of the woman fleeing for the 1260 years, he represents papal Rome sitting on the 7 hills. And 4, the dragon is symbolic of the system of astrology, which in its beginnings was the worship of the 7 planetary gods. Let us ask, what is the chief god out of the 7 gods? And what is the name of that religion? The chief god is the sun, and the name of this religion is Hermeticism.
So this week we're going to continue where we left off and move into the origins of the number 666.
That is correct. Once again, we will resume analyzing sections of chapter 6. Last week we discussed that certain ziggurats of Babylon possess 7 layers to represent the 7 planetary gods, and these 7 gods represented the 7-fold nature of the great dragon. Out of the 7 planetary gods, the sun was the primary representation of the dragon power. The sun was viewed as the primary god, for it was believed that the sun was the creator of all life. Now, in addition to these things, the Chaldeans were inspired to develop a sophisticated mathematical system congruous to what they believed was the sun's daily and yearly path around the earth. Notice what Durant says in the following. Durant says, Babylonian mathematics rested on a division of the circle into 360 degrees, and of the year into 360 days. On this basis, it developed a sexagesimal system of calculation by 60s, which became the parent of latter duodecimal systems of reckoning by 12s. The Babylonians divided the ecliptic, the path of the earth around the sun, into 12 signs of the zodiac, and that comes from Our Oriental Heritage, pages 256 and 257. Note this clearly. The astrological system of Babylon gives us a representation of the number 666 as an important numerical value of the sun's rotation in the zodiac. And how is this the case? This is what we are going to explore right now as we discuss the zodiac. Now follow this closely. The original zodiac, as it pertained to the daily rotation of the sun, is divided into 2 halves, day and night. In each half, we find 6 houses for the sun. There are 6 houses in the day and 6 houses in the night, equaling 12 houses total.
DS, I have two questions to ask.
Go ahead.
A moment ago, you said that the Babylonians believed that the sun has a daily and yearly rotation around the earth. Today, science believes that the planets rotate around the sun. Why did the Babylonians believe the other way?
The zodiac was conceptually constructed on the basis of the geocentric theory, which means the ancients believed the earth was the center of the solar system. Said another way, the earth was believed to be the center of the zodiac. Consequently, not only the sun, but the moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn were believed to rotate around the earth and the zodiac. Now, what is the next question?
Concerning the daily sun zodiac, you say that there are 6 houses in the day and 6 houses in the night, equaling 12 houses total. Are the 6 houses in each half of the zodiac the same as ours?
No, that would mean that a Babylonian day rested on 12 hours. We are talking about something different here. The ancient Babylonians most likely divided their day into 2 sets of 12, equaling 24 hours. When we are talking about the daily sun zodiac, we are describing not hours in the day, rather we are discussing 12 manifestations of the triune sun deity. The focal point of the daily sun zodiac in this representation is not time, but the function of the sun deity. Let me explain this in more detail. In the 24-hour day, there were 12 manifestations of the triune sun. The original zodiac, as it pertained to the daily rotation of the sun, is divided into 2 halves, day and night. In each half, we find 6 houses. There are 6 houses in the day and 6 houses in the night, equaling 12 houses total. Let us underscore that there were 6 houses for the sun in the day and 6 in the night. Within each house, there was believed to be 3 rooms, which the sun passed through, equaling 18 rooms in the day and 18 in the night, with a total of 36 rooms in the zodiac. Within each half of the zodiac, the trinity of the sun is ever in focus. There are 3 rooms per house representing the passage of the 3 suns, or the triune sun, through the ecliptic of the zodiac. The 18 rooms in each half of the zodiac are made up of 3 times 6. Each half of the zodiac, both day and night and mutually exclusive from one another, is made up of 6 plus 6 plus 6, representing the trinity of the sun in its 3 main points, beginning, middle, and ending. Also, when we take the zodiac in its entirety, meaning the complete circle, in both its day and night rotation combined, we get 666. And how is this the case? Here is the example. There are 36 rooms in both halves of the zodiac. We add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36, and we get 666.
In other words, in each half of the zodiac, the 6 houses multiplied by the triune sun gives us 18. In each half of the zodiac, we have 6 plus 6 plus 6, which is an illusion of 666. And when we take the whole zodiac, the 12 houses multiplied by the triune sun gives us the number 36, and the summary number of 1 to 36 is 666.
That is correct. And let us not forget that the 666 trinity of the sun points to the dragon trinity. Now, not only was the zodiac conceptualized to represent the daily path of the sun around the earth, but also it was conceptualized to represent the yearly path of the sun around the earth. Manly P. Hall tells us, he says, each year the sun passes entirely around the zodiac and returns to the point from which it started, the vernal equinox. And that comes from the Secret Teachings of All Ages, page 53. In other words, to the Babylonians, the 12 sections of the zodiac were not only applicable to the daily rotation of the sun, but also its yearly rotation. This is why the Babylonians applied a 12-month year with 360 days. Thus, the numerical value of the sun on a yearly basis was 666. The number 666 was the sacred number of the sun in both its daily and the yearly rotation.
Okay, DS, let me get this straight. The number 666 has its beginnings in sun worship. Does this number apply to the other planets?
In the zodiac, 666 can also be implicated to the other planets, but only in their relation to the sun. Of course, this presupposes that the number 666 is more important in its application to the sun than the other 6 planets. And why is this the case? Notice the following quote from Franz Cumont. He says, "The solar theology of the Chaldeans had a decisive effect upon the final development of Semitic paganism. It led to their seeing the sun the directing power of the cosmic system. All the Baals were thenceforward turned into suns, the sun itself being the mover of the other stars, like it, eternal and unconquerable, whose revolutions together determine the succession of the phenomena of the universe according to the cycles of great years. As the heart of the universe, the sun was the seat of the divine energy pervading this vast organism to its extremities." And this comes from the Cambridge Ancient History, Volume 11, Franz Cumont, The Frontier Provinces of the East, pages 643 and 646. And in other words, the sun was believed to be the directing power of the cosmic system and the mover of the other stars. The other planets were viewed as smaller suns of the one great sun. Said another way, the grand solar orb was the preeminent god of the smaller gods. As was noted earlier, the Borsippa ziggurat possessed the sun on the top level as the first god of the following 6. Now, concerning the number 1, George Feuerstein tells us the following. He says the 1, and he's talking about the number 1, the 1 is considered to be the temporal and a spatial origin of all manifestation. It is equated with the divine, the Godhead, the absolute prior to all differentiated forms. And that comes from Spirituality by the Numbers, pages 21 and 22. Now, what does this mean? This concept of the number 1. To the pagans of ancient Babylon, the number 1 pointed to the first god of importance, the sun god. The differentiated forms of the 1 pointed to the other planetary gods, meaning all gods of pagan idolatry had their identity in the one god, the sun god. As a result, the number 666 could be implicated to the other planets, but only in their relation to the sun god. We can further explain this reasoning by the following diagrams. Now, I know the listeners don't have these diagrams in front of them, so I will try to be as descriptive as possible. Now, here I have 2 different diagrams. The first diagram, I have a depiction of the sun. The sun is the 666 god, and underneath the sun, I have the 6 planets. Now, the moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn all have 666 underneath them as well. Now, on the next diagram, I have no sun, and the 6 planets, the moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn, have absolutely no value. Now, what do these diagrams represent? In the first diagram, the 6 planets carry the number 666 because they are differentiated forms of the one God. The sun, the primary carrier of 666, is the directing power of the cosmic system and the mover of the other stars. Now, the second diagram shows that if we were to somehow eliminate the sun, the values of the other planets would become 0. Moreover, if we somehow eliminated the sun, all the Babylonian philosophical meanings to the 6 planets would become meaningless. For it is in the sun, the light of the great dragon, that all numerology and all astrological philosophy has its existence.
It's apparent that 666 is greatest in the sun god. It's also clear that the religion of ancient Babylon is the religion of the dragon and the religion of 666.
Mike, this is also the case with Egypt. The mathematical system of the Chaldeans can also be visualized in ancient Egypt. The Egyptians made great use of the zodiac in the building of the Great Pyramids. For example, the Great Pyramid of Egypt is built on a square and has 4 faces, or 4 triangles. What is special about the triangle? Manly P. Hall tells us, He says, in modern masonry, the deity is symbolized by an equilateral triangle, its three sides representing the primary manifestation of the Eternal One. And that comes from the Secret Teachings of All Ages, page 49. Now, was the Eternal One, according to the Egyptians, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Not at all. Manly P. Hall inadvertently tells the opposite. He says, by the Egyptians, the Great Pyramid was associated with Hermes, the god of wisdom and letters, and the divine illuminator worshipped through the planet Mercury. Relating Hermes to the pyramid emphasizes anew the fact that it was in reality the supreme temple of the invisible and supreme deity. That comes from the Secret Teachings of All Ages, page 44.
The Great Pyramid was associated with Hermeticism.
Exactly. The Great Pyramid was associated with Hermes, and he was associated with the dragon and the sun. Thus, the pyramid was a representation of the dragon power and the sun god. The Eternal One of the Egyptians was the sun god. I agree with W. Max Muller's understanding of Egypt, where he says, the belief became current that the sun, the greatest of all cosmic forces, grew quiet by himself out of the abyss as the god who begat, or formed himself, and that he then created the space of air between heaven and earth, after whom heaven and earth themselves were brought into being. From these gods came the rest of the creation, including the new sun as Osiris, and the sun god continued to create gods and finally produced men from his eyes. This comes from the Mythology of All Races, Volume 12, by W. Max Muller, pages 49 and 50.
After looking at that document, it wouldn't be difficult to conclude that 666 was the number of the Egyptian sun god.
It is not difficult to come to that conclusion because the Egyptians predicted future events through 666. This is seen in the following astrological chart, which uses the 36 numbers of the zodiac and was used in Egypt to predict future events. In front of me, I have an astrological chart that contains 6 rows across and 6 columns down. The numbers 1 through 36 are scattered throughout this chart. Each row and each column adds up to 111. When we multiply 111 times 6, we come up with 666. Concerning this chart, Feuerstein describes its meaning as follows. He says, the Western Hermetic tradition originated with Pythagoras, who was inspired by the Egyptians. In this tradition, sacred geometry was of paramount importance. One of the great mathematical mysteries concerned the magical square of the sun, consisting of the numbers 1 to 36, arranged in rows and columns of 6 numbers each. Each row and each column adds up to 111, making a total of 666 for the magical square. This number was considered symbolical of the sun as the solar spirit animating our universe. Now notice what he says in this last sentence. He says, this number, meaning 666, was considered symbolical of the sun as the solar spirit animating our universe. And that comes from Spirituality by the Numbers, pages 242 and 243. And notice that Feuerstein attributes this knowledge to Egypt. Note this clearly, that 666 was the number of the Egyptian sun, just like in Babylon, can also be visualized in the Egyptian phoenix. In Egypt, the phoenix was a mythical bird of great importance. The phoenix was intimately connected to the sun. In the book Illuminati 666 by W.J. Sutton, he tells us the following. Now, it just so happens that one of the old spellings of phoenix is phoenix, spelled P-H-E-N-E-X, or phoenix, spelled F-E-N-E-X, in Greek transliterations. Like the name Lucifer, phoenix means shining one. And that comes from the Illuminati 666, pages 113 and page 70. Why is this significant? This is significant because phoenix, F-E-N-E-X, has the Greek numerical value of 666. F equals 6, E equals 5, N equals 50, E once again equals 5, and X equals 600, with a total of 666 for the Greek transliteration of phoenix. Let us ask the question, ultimately, what does the phoenix represent? Hall tells us, the phoenix was regarded as sacred to the sun and the length of its life was taken as a standard for measuring the motion of the heavenly bodies, and also the cycles of time used in the mysteries to designate the periods of existence. And that comes from the Secret Teachings of All Ages, page 90. The phoenix, the shining one, ultimately represents the sun and therefore represents Lucifer. This is why 666 is to be found here.
DS, when someone really studies this history, it becomes obvious that Hermeticism developed in the days of Nimrod and then became the religion of Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon. I wouldn't be surprised if you prove next that Hermeticism became the religion of Persia, Greece, Rome, and Papal Rome.
You need not be surprised, because that is the case. In Persia, Hermeticism was cloaked under the title of Zoroastrianism, and specifically, Mithraism within that Persian system highlighted sun worship. But because in a future study soon to come, we are going to spend a considerable amount of time on Mithraism, we are not going to deal with that issue right now. We are now going to make a few comments on Greece and move into Romanism and demonstrate how Hermeticism has found its best home on the Seven Hills. Let us begin by asking, can 666 be found in Greece? We find that the number 666 can also be found in Greece and was applied to the Greek god Titan. Sutton shows that Titan is actually a Greek name for Satan and possesses the numerical value of 666. On page 69 of his book, he demonstrates the name Titan. T equals 300, E equals 5, I equals 10, T again equals 300, A equals 1, N equals 50, a total of 666 for Titan. Now, Hislop too argues that Titan was another name for Satan. He says, Titan is just the Chaldean form of Shaitan, the very name by which Satan has been called by the devil worshippers of Kurdistan. And from Armenia or Kurdistan, this devil worship embodied in the Chaldean mysteries came westward to Asia Minor and thence to Rome. And that comes from the Two Babylons, page 276. Hislop, through Roman mythology, reveals how Titan was just another name for the serpent power. Hislop says, though Titan in the days of Hesiod and in early Greece was an opprobrious name, yet in Rome in the days of the empire and before it had become the very reverse. The splendid and glorious Titan was the way in which Titan was spoken of at Rome. This was the title commonly given to the sun, both as the orb of day and viewed as a divinity. Now, the reader has seen already that another form of the sun divinity, or Titan at Rome, was the Epidaurian snake, worshipped under the name of Asclepius, that is, the man-instructing serpent. Here then in Rome was Titan or Satan identified with the serpent that taught mankind, that opened their eyes and gave them the knowledge of good and evil. And that comes from the Two Babylons, pages 278 and 279. Note this clearly. The name Titan possesses the number 666 because, as Hislop says, this title was commonly given to the sun and was equated with Asclepius. Now, also note this with clarity. The man-instructing serpent, as a concept, is clearly derived from the Chaldean worship of the seven-headed dragon. Or, said another way, the man-instructing serpent as a concept is clearly derived from the Hermetic dragon.
In the last quote, you show that Titan was viewed as evil in Greece, but viewed as good in Rome. Why is this the case?
The question is, why was Titan viewed as both a good and evil god? In the Chaldean mysteries, the great dragon or serpent power was a dualistic god. Parts of this dualism can be seen in the Assyrio-Babylonian myth of creation. According to the New Larousse Encyclopedia of Mythology, page 49, two monstrous serpents were the firstborn in the creation, and they gave birth to the male and female principles of the celestial and terrestrial worlds. These two monstrous serpents were symbolical analogies of the great Hermetic dragon. Because the sun was the representation of the dragon, it was believed that the sun was both male and female, both good and evil. In the two sections of the zodiac, we see a representation of this dualism. During the day, the dragon power, represented by the sun, was a good god, but at night he was considered an evil god. We see this same pattern in Egyptian paganism. In the New Larousse Encyclopedia of Mythology, page 11, we read the following. From the moment that the sun god left earth for heaven, his life was immutably regulated. During the 12 daylight hours, he rode in his boat from east to west across his kingdom. He took great care to avoid the attack of his eternal enemy, Epep, the great serpent who lived in the depths of the celestial Nile and sometimes, for instance, during total eclipses, succeeded in swallowing the solar bark. But Epep was always at last vanquished by Ra's defenders and cast back into the abyss. During the 12 hours of darkness, the perils which Ra faced were even greater. But again they were overcome, and at night he passed from cavern to cavern, receiving the acclamations of the inhabitants of the underworld, who waited with impatience for the light he bore, and after his departure fell back into the agony of darkness. I agree with Manly P. Hall where he emphasizes that primitive conceptions concerning the warfare between good and evil were often based upon the alterations of day and night. And that comes from The Secret Teachings of All Ages, page 52. So, in looking at this, Titan could be seen as both good and evil because Titan was another name for the sun or the dragon. As we have seen in the zodiac, the number 666 can be applied to not only the complete value of the circle, but also each half of the zodiac, bringing out the dualism of this symbol.
It is indisputable that the zodiac revolves around the dragon, and it's without doubt that 666 is the supreme number of astrology. I think now I'm ready to hear about the number 666 in Rome.
Very good. J.A. Wiley tells us, "It was in the soil of the seven hills, amid the trophies of unnumbered victories, the symbols of universal empire, and the gorgeous rites of a polluting polytheism that Romanism grew up." And that comes from the Papacy, History, Dogmas, Genius, and Prospects, Book 1, page 11. We must ask, did the seven hills of Rome become the seat of the seven-headed dragon? And did the seven hills of Rome become the seat of 666? In Clarke's commentary, we find that Clarke identifies the title, the Latin Kingdom, in its Greek name, with the number 666. Clarke emphasizes, no other kingdom on earth can be found to contain 666. And this is found in Clarke's commentary, page 1026. Now, right here in front of me, I have the title, The Latin Kingdom in Greek. It says, He Latin Basilia, and the numerical value is 666. The Bavarian reformer, Andreas Osiander, between 1498 through 1552, was a Hebrew scholar who identified that the title Roman Kingdom in Hebrew has the numerical value of 666. And you can see this information in Prophetic Faith of Our Fathers, Volume 2, page 300. Is the number 666 to be found in Rome? Absolutely. Even in something as simple as the Roman numeral system, we find sun worship. Originally, the Roman letter numerical system consisted of the letters I, V, X, L, C, D, without the letter M. The letter M was a later addition. Interestingly, the original Roman numerals add up to 666. I equals 1, V equals 5, X equals 10, L equals 50, C equals 100, D equals 500, a total of 666. Now, since the Roman Catholic Church is the continuation of pagan Rome, does the Catholic Church too carry the number of the dragon, the 666 God? Is it a coincidence that the name Italian Church in Greek equals 666? Italian Church in Greek is Italica Ecclesia, and it has the numerical value of 666. So let us raise the question again. Is it a coincidence that the name Italian Church equals 666? There is no coincidence here. For the Roman Catholic Church sits on the seven hills of Rome, and the papacy is Satan's masterpiece. It is Nimrod's kingdom fully realized. It makes complete sense that the papacy should possess the numerical value of 666. For as Sutton points out in his book, The Illuminati 666, on page 38, the word Vatican means divination by the serpent.
No wonder the Catholic Church carries 666. The very seat of the papacy means the serpent. This obviously stems back to the great dragon of Hermeticism. I think now I understand what Revelation 13 means when it says the dragon gave the beast his power and seat and authority. This means the very system of Satan, paganism, and sun worship became focalized in papal Rome.
That's right. Not only does papal Rome carry the number 666, but we are told that the man in charge of the papacy carries that number. Revelation 13:18 says, "Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Let us ask for emphasis. Who is the man that is in charge of the beast? 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 3 and 4 tell us, "Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come," meaning the day of Christ will not come, "unless the falling away comes first. And the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." The man of sin and son of perdition is the man over the beast who carries the number 666, and this man is the Pope. Does he too carry the number 666? We learn from Dr. Leroy Froome that Master Andreas Helwich, between 1572 through 1643, was the author of a Greek dictionary and the author of a volume on Greek vowels and synonyms. Helwich cited 5 Latin names as applicable to the Pope, but his main focus was on the title Vicarius Filii Dei, because this title is an expansion of the official title Christi Vicarius, or Vicarius Christi. Now, Helwich explains that this title, Vicarius Filii Dei, is very much in harmony with the views of the popes concerning their position. He tells us, "But behold, this present name, Vicarius Filii Dei, in every way is such as is required. For first, it is a Latin name, and most exactly renders with significant letters the apocalyptic number. Then it harmonizes wholly and always with the papal order in itself, as no pontiff denies. Then it is not offensive or vile as imposed upon him by adversaries, but is especially honorable to this very one, venerable and formidable to others, which all the pontiffs have now already ascribed to themselves for more than 600 years. And this is cited in Prophetic Faith of Our Fathers, Volume 2, page 86. Helwich argues that this title is very much in harmony with the papal boast that he is Vicar of the Son of God. The Latin name, when you look at it, has the numerical value of 666. Vicarius Filii Dei equals 666. Another important point to notice is that the word vicarious or vicar means instead of or in the place of. This is the very definition of the Greek word anti. Therefore, this title means anti-Son of God or Antichrist, which means the Pope is in place of Christ, and by making such boasts, he is actually against Christ.
DS, I've heard arguments that Vicarius Filii Dei is a fabricated name invented by Protestants.
Yes, I have heard this crap too. Patrick Madrid, the author of the article Pope Fiction, found in the Envoy magazine dated either March or April of 98, says to any Protestant who believes that Vicarius Filii Dei is the title of popery, he says to them, ask him to furnish even one example of a papal decree, ecclesiastical letter, conciliar statement, or any other official Catholic document in which the Pope calls himself or is referred to as the Vicar of the Son of God. He won't be able to find one because none exist. Vicarius Filii Dei has never been a title of the Pope, and this is what Madrid says. Madrid has even written a book called Pope Fiction. As was just cited, Madrid has made a challenge to the Protestant world or to anyone to furnish proof of the existence of Vicarius Filii Dei in the Catholic Church. Michael Scheifler at www.biblelite.net/666.htm has taken up Madrid's challenge and argues against Madrid's false notion astutely, and shows that Vicarius Filii Dei was very much used by the papacy for centuries. How does Scheifler prove his argument? In short, the donation of Constantine is a forged document from about the 8th century, which at least 10 popes utilized as proof of their civil authority over Rome. Now, concerning this document, Colin McEvedy says the following. The extreme papal claims were expressed in a document purporting to be the will of the Emperor Constantine, in which he left the temporal rule of the whole West to the Vicar of Christ. The kings of the West were thus merely tenants of the Pope, and their positions had to be ratified by him. The fact that this detail had never been observed was hardly surprising, as Constantine seems to have neglected to draw up his will until he had been dead for 400 years. And this comes from the Penguin Atlas of Medieval History, page 56. Now note this clearly. For centuries, this document, this donation of Constantine, was incorporated into Catholic canon law. Scheifler quotes a section of this material in that website that I just mentioned a moment ago. And I recommend to all the listeners, go study this website, www.biblelite.net/666.htm. Now, let us emphasize that Scheifler quotes a section of this material. He has the Latin and then he has it in English. Here's what it says in English. As the blessed Peter is seen to have been constituted vicar of the Son of God on the earth, so the pontiffs who are the representatives of that same chief of the apostles should obtain from us in our empire the power of a supremacy greater than the clemency of our earthly imperial serenity is seen to have conceded to it. And this comes from the donation of Constantine, quoted in Christopher B. Coleman's The Treatise of Lorenzo Valla on the donation of Constantine, pages 12 and 13. And by the way, right here where it says Vicar of the Son of God in English, up here in the Latin, what does it say? It says Vicarius Filii Dei. It's in plain sight. I got big news. I got gigantic news. And looking at these documents, Vicarius Filii Dei was incorporated into Catholic law for several centuries as a result of the donation of Constantine. Scheifler proves his argument through the papacy's 1879 Corpus Juris Canonici, which quotes the donation of Constantine and specifically quotes Vicarius Filii Dei. Scheifler further proves his argument through a demonstration of the 1858 version, Volume 5 of Prompta Bibliotheca, column 828, number 20 of Article 2. So if you want to see these things, go to that website, and in that website he demonstrates these different Latin quotations, and you see Vicarius Filii Dei in plain sight. The issue is simple. If Vicarius Filii Dei is a Protestant creation, as Madrid maintains, then why is this title found in Catholic writings that predate the Reformation? And moreover, why is this title to be found in 19th century writings of Catholic law? The papacy accepted this title prior to the Reformation, witnessed the rise of Protestantism with all the Protestant allegations of popery being the Antichrist, but yet the papacy still allowed Vicarius Filii Dei to exist in 19th century Catholic writings. The fact is, Madrid does not know what he is talking about. We agree with Scheifler's response to Madrid, where he says, the Roman Catholic Church is now stuck with the embarrassing legacy of temporal papal authority being asserted for hundreds of years on the basis of a fraudulent document, probably of the Church's own making. How ironic that in the process of trying to assert papal authority, they are also permanently branded by their own hand with Vicarius Filii Dei and 666. What poetic justice.
You know, it doesn't matter how much documentation is presented. Doesn't matter how well the issues are explained. It doesn't matter if the Bible reveals these things in absolute clarity. And it wouldn't even matter if God himself told the leaders of Rome and the leaders of dispensationalism these things, because they will only hear what they want to. Garbage.
Right.
Garbage and lies.
That's right. Absolute garbage. They will always play hopscotch around these issues. But no matter how hard they try to erase history, there will always be people like us to remind them of history. No matter how hard they try to hide the truth from the world, there will always be people like us to tell the world the truth.
Amen. At least there's one program out there.
That's true.
And what's the name of it? Hearing the Truth? Now, I have an important question on the present issue. How did the position of popery ever receive the number 666?
Why does popery carry the number 666? First of all, we must emphasize that 666 comes from the dragon or sun worship. Secondly, we must emphasize that the papacy on the 7 hills of Rome has become the seat of the dragon. This is all clear, but how did the position of popery ever come to acquire the number 666? Nimrod, the prototypical king of Babylon, and those who followed were recognized as being the incarnation of the sun in a human body, meaning the kings of paganism were believed to be sun kings. Thus, their numerical value correlated with that of the sun. It is only a matter of simple logic. Number 1, 666 was the number given to the sun. 2, the pagan kings were believed to be the sun in a human body. And 3, the sun kings carried the number of the sun god, the god that they were representing in human form. According to Sutton on page 61 of his book, this was the case with the Buddhas or Rasis of Asia, who were believed to be the incarnation of the sun. The Greek word that connects the Buddhas to the sun is Exion, X-I-U-N, meaning solar wisdom or wisdom of the sun. Exion in its Greek value has the following numbers: 666. X equals 600, I equals 10, U equals 6, N equals 50, a total of 666. Note this clearly. The deification of kings as the representation of the sun incarnate began in the days of Nimrod and was bequeathed to the kingdoms, the pagan kingdoms that came after Babylon. The Bible Almanac states the following: the Romans found many different languages, religions, and cultures among the people they conquered. The Roman Empire gradually absorbed these foreign beliefs, including the worship of political leaders. The eastern provinces had customs of worshiping their living rulers. Egyptians thought that the pharaohs had descended from the sun god, while the Greeks worshipped their great warriors who had died. Alexander the Great established for himself a cult of worshippers in Alexandria. The Seleucids of Syria and the Ptolemies of Egypt followed this tradition, calling themselves gods living on earth. When the power of Rome began to replace these monarchs, the worship of Roma, meaning a deification of the Roman state, began to supplant their cults. The conquered people began to worship great individual Romans, Sulla, Mark Antony, and Julius Caesar. And this comes from the Bible Almanac, page 111. So, in essence, the Pope carries the number 666 because he holds the same position as the ancient kings of pagan idolatry. Notice the following statements from the New Larousse Encyclopedia of Mythology on page 43 and pages 11 and 12. They say, Pharaoh must also be named among the gods of Egypt, for the king's divinity formed part of the earliest dogmas. To his subjects, moreover, he was the sun god reigning on earth. It was taught that he actually perpetuated the solar line, for whenever there was a change of king, the god Ra married the queen, who then bore a son, who in his turn mounted the throne of the living. Universally recognized as the creator and ruler of the world, Ra, with whom all the other gods were finally identified, became, from the time of the Old Kingdom, the divinity particularly revered by the pharaohs, who called themselves sons of Ra.
Wow, this is amazing. The very tradition of the Sun Kings still prevails in popery.
Mike, even if we could not identify 666 to the name of popery, this number still applies to them by implication through the lineage of paganism. But it seems as though certain titles of popery lead directly to 666. And why is this the case? Because these titles go back to the Sun King tradition and ultimately the great dragon of Hermeticism. Hislop brings the titles of popery to further clarification. He says, is the Pope called God upon earth, the vice-God and vicar of Jesus Christ? The king in Egypt, who was sovereign pontiff, was regarded with the highest reverence as the representative of the divinity on earth. Is the Pope infallible? And does the Church of Rome, in consequence, boast that it has always been unchanged and unchangeable? The same was the case with the Chaldean pontiff and the system over which he presided. The sovereign pontiff was believed to be incapable of error, and in consequence there was the greatest respect for the sanctity of old edicts, and hence no doubt also the origin of the custom that the laws of the Medes and Persians could not be altered. Does the Pope receive the adoration of the cardinals? The king of Babylon, as sovereign pontiff, was adored in like manner. Are kings and ambassadors required to kiss the Pope's slipper? This too is copied from the same pattern. And this statement here comes from the Two Babylons, pages 211 and 212. Hislop is right. The position of popery and their rituals all stem back to Egypt, Babylon, and ultimately Hermeticism. In the preceding quote, also notice that Hislop used the term vice God, which means God upon earth, and argues that the Pope claims this position on earth. Interestingly, in the book The Illuminati 666, page 276, we find that the last Pope, John Paul, when his name is combined with vice God in the Latin language, equals 666. Here it is. Juan Paulo Vice Deo. Juan Paulo Vice Deo. That is John Paul Vice God, and it equals 666.
DS, after seeing all the issues that have been presented today, I'd like to know what you think of John Hagee's opinion concerning 666. In his book, Beginning of the End, page 135, he says, this information about how to identify the Antichrist is of no practical value to the church, since we will be watching from the balconies of heaven by the time he is revealed. Notice how he says no practical value to the church. Of course, he's talking about the Catholic Church, so.
Let me read what he says. Hagee says, this information about how to identify the Antichrist is of no practical value to the church, since we will be watching from the balconies of heaven by the time he is revealed. By the time he is revealed, the Antichrist and his number has been here for centuries. 666 was the number given to the sun and the dragon in ancient paganism and has filled the papacy today. You asked me what I think of Hagee's statement. What do you think?
I'm speechless. I've never heard or seen such unprecedented short-sightedness. This guy's obviously misinformed, yes.
Oh, I know. That is really the whole problem with dispensationalism. Because they believe that the information pertaining to the Antichrist and his number has no value for the church, they have completely missed the fulfillment of Antichrist and his number throughout the centuries. Such willful blindness has brought them to a state in which they don't have a clue that 666 has been here and it has filled their churches as well. When Hagee says that he will be in heaven by means of the secret rapture by the time Antichrist and his number is revealed, he is sadly deceived. There will be no secret rapture before a 7-year tribulation. Because these fellows have not rightly identified the truth of these matters, they are fulfilling the prophecy of the false prophet who restores power to the beast. I got big news. When the mark of the beast is enforced, it is going to have everything to do with sun worship, the origin of the number 666. Because men like Hagee believe that 666 has not yet come, and because they believe that they are going to be secretly raptured prior to 666, they will not even know that it will be they themselves and the fallen Christian world who actually enforce the mark of the beast. They are a part of the system of the dragon. They are a part of the system of 666 already. Dispensationalism through the Jesuit order was created by the devil just so the world would be deceived into believing a lie, so that when the final abomination of desolation takes place, they will not recognize it for what it is. While ministers like Hagee, Jack Van Impe, Tim LaHaye, and others are telling the world, while they're saying the Antichrist and false prophet are coming in the future, and they are going to put chips in people, but don't worry.
And barcodes.
We will be raptured before that day. While they are telling the world this stuff, they themselves are fulfilling the prophecy of the false prophet and are deceiving the world through their Jesuit doctrines of comic book Beliar fiction. And they are leading the world to worship the beast.
They're leading people blindly. They're cattle ranching. DS, I see why you dislike dispensationalism.
No, I hate that system. because it is the voice of the false prophet which gives power to the beast. And ultimately, both Catholicism and Jesuit-constructed Protestantism are filled with the system of the dragon. Do I hate the people in these movements? Not at all. I myself was once in those churches. I care about the people. I care about them enough to warn them to come out of spiritual darkness. While our message may seem harsh, we are not hateful, but we are angry with the devil and his operation, and it is our job to tell the world to come out of Babylon.
Yes, we're out of time. It's been real. It's been great to hear the truth once again.
Mike, once again, it is good to be on Hearing the Truth.
Thanks once again for being on the show. And next week, DS and myself will be here again to tell you more, to get more people to know the deception and avoid it.
That's right.